Hi there, and welcome to the Craveville podcast, where real matters. We are your hosts, Ben and Katie, and this show is brought to you by Fossil Farms. Welcome to the show today, Ben.
Thank you for having me.
So, eating in this economy?
Great title, right?
Yeah, shout
And what does it mean? Can you explain to the people why we have that title and kind of what's going on in the world today?
Sure. So, I'm quite positive by the time this episode airs that the situation will not have gotten better.
No.
But obviously inflation, that's kind of the thing today with literally everything. But especially food. Food, drinks, goods, things that we need to survive. The prices for virtually everything are going through the roof. Definitely, especially in the meat industry, but just regular, average, everyday groceries. And it's gotten so crazy and so bad that, it's A, worth talking about here, and B, some people are forced to make decisions on what they buy and what they can spend their money on because it's just gotten to be absolutely absurd and just unreasonable.
Untenable.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew Ben loves that word.
I do love that word. I think I kind of brought this topic up because, as you said, we all go to the grocery store, inflation's measured on a ton of different goods. They'll measure it against, steel production and stuff. I'm like, well, I've never built or plan on building a skyscraper, so that doesn't affect me. But when you go to the grocery store and you see your weekly grocery bill go up incrementally week after week after week, and then you look back at 2020, 2021, and then now, and I'm like, I'm paying feels like, or maybe even technically is twice as much. And I'm like, I got to look at these numbers and see what people are spending. And maybe we'll start there because I was looking at the New Jersey household average for what people are spending. And it's about $275 weekly, which doesn't sound terrible. But then they break it down by people in household. And even for a one person household, it's $192 on average in groceries, which I think is insane. You're basically spending $200 per week. It's $800 a month just on the stuff you're getting at the grocery store. And that obviously includes produce and meat and things that you're going to cook at home. That's, pre-prepared foods, freezer stuff, snacks, etc. And probably even, so health and beauty products, which are always going to skew it in a certain way. That's why, you just switch over to some cheaper Head and Shoulders or something like that. Whatever. That's what I do. Not important. But at the same time, I always wonder, especially from our point of view in the industry, when and why certain things go up. We talk about this all the time with our clients and our partners of the benefits of game meats. And one of those benefits is that non-changing cost. And I think you could touch on that a bit.
Yeah, for sure. There are things that are considered commodity proteins. So that's your beef, pork, chicken. Most of the game meats are not considered commodity proteins. For example, the beef market, our local Angus beef program, even though, yes, it is, 100% all natural, it's beef at the heart of it. So it is affected by the commodity beef industry. So what that means on, kind of a day-to-day level is every single week when our purchasing department orders our beef for the next week, that price fluctuates literally based on the market at that exact moment. So, it's oftentimes the way we build our prices that are customer facing is, we build them to be at a certain point so that if the market fluctuates up a bit, we don't have to raise it, and it's okay, it's, it's in a safe region that we're not changing our prices every week, which is completely, unsustainable.
Right.
But yeah, because game meat is not technically in that commodity market, there's no such thing as looking at the
futures
the market,
of venison.
Exactly. The futures. And so the pricing is much more stable for that reason. And also when things are being done, the all natural way, there's not so many absurdly crazy things that can happen that would decimate the population or something like that.
Yeah.
And so for kind of all of those reasons, the prices are, much. Was that the question? Why is game meat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you nailed it.
So they're not commodities. So,
it's a long explanation. I could see you losing the plot on the way there.
Yeah. But the whole, industry as far as game meats go is much more stable and less susceptible to that change.
Yeah. And so now what we're seeing on the inside, just to be upfront, is bison pricing going.
Bison pricing.
Bison pricing is going upson. And it's one of those things where you're like, well, why would this item change? And we explain to people, well, it hasn't changed in about 2 or 3 years, you know? Like if you've had this item on your menu, you've seen no increase in cost. Like you were paying a small premium before, but you're creating a lot of value in that product because it's so stable. So as those years go by, you're making more and more money on it as everything else is going up, but rather your costs aren't changing. So that stability, I think, adds one, value, and two, just kind of like, again, mental stability. You're just like, I don't have to worry about this product. And to your point, like looking at market forces, like people are trading on what the future of beef is going to be and like how many steers or cattle they're going to be in like next year for them to bet on. And like then that market can affect something that hasn't even happened yet because people are essentially like gambling on meat farming, which in itself, like there's a moral debate to be had. Sure. And I think it's like, you know, one of those egregious things where we're talking about feeding people at the end of the day. So it doesn't sit well with me that people are constantly doing that, or people are like, oh, pork futures like crap the bed, and now like pork prices are like dropping because we thought pork would be more expensive. And it's kind of like, well, when you run a business, don't you go, here's what it cost me to make the product and here's what I need to sell to make a profit, and then like that's it? And they're like, no, like what if in the future it costs you less and we bet on it?
I get it, but that's literally like
and that's just is what it is.
Like,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
It works.
Because it's not just domestic. Like these, with it being commodity meats like beef, chicken, and pork, the U.S., I don't know how much they're importing. I know we get a lot of South American beef kind of flooding the market now, and that's affecting domestic markets because they're like, well, how do I compete against this like quote unquote cheap beef that's coming in? Like we would have to lower our prices to kind of compete with that. And then we're cutting into our margin. So there's all these things going on. We're not economists. We're not doctors, or we're not economists. Doctors. We're learning a lot of things that we're not. We're great people. That's what matters. But I was looking and kind of getting a breakdown on it.
Can I say one
yeah,
before
of course,
you
please.
go too far away?
Yeah.
So it makes, you know, Ben's right. Our bison pricing hasn't changed in years, but I mean, it makes complete and utter sense. Like the beef market right now is absolutely so berserk on its own, and then you have a massive amount of grass-fed beef coming in from South America at a much cheaper price, which is contributing to the ruin of the beef market. So by nature, the demand for bison is going to increase because, you know, what's the most similar thing that you could possibly eat to beef that's not beef? Well, it's definitely bison.
Yeah.
So the demand across the board, like consumers and, you know, wholesalers, whatever, restaurants alike, I mean, the demand for bison has increased, and that's still literally just how supply and demand works. I mean, the price is, you know, going to go up a little, but it's still not going to be as radical as the way the beef pricing goes up.
Exactly. It hasn't been to the point that I look at some of that pricing. I'm like, oh, this like doesn't work anymore. Even if it's like $1 or $1.50 here or something like that. I think that's still very reasonable. And obviously with some bias, I find a lot of value in eating significantly healthier meats and getting something that's grass fed and getting something that's all natural, hormone free, antibiotic free, and there's pasture raised. I think there's a lot of value in that, right? And the commodity meats don't have that inherently. But I was looking at a breakdown of kind of whole bison carcasses. Like a lot of bison farms will actually explain to their customers why it ends up costing so much. And if you're bringing in bison and you end up bringing it for slaughter, you have what they call hot hanging weight, which is before it goes into a cooler or it ends up being dry aged or something and it's losing like that water weight. So you essentially have an animal and you're only getting 60 to 65% of that weight that you can work with. And that's what they sell. So that's, you're like, oh, I'm like losing, 40% of the animal because it's like the hide and the organs and things like that. And they always hang it without the head. And then you're wondering to yourself, okay, like that seems reasonable, like 40% margin, whatever it might be. But then after you break that animal down, you're still only getting another 60 to 65% off of that because you're losing the bones, you're losing the trim and the fat, and then you're cutting up the steaks and then you're paying for packaging. So you're having an animal that might have costs, I mean, I don't know these numbers, but like, let's say it was like your cost was $6 a pound. And then like you're able to sell it for somewhere between like $8 and $10 a pound. Like that's high compared to beef in general. Like we've seen ground beef for whatever, $2.99, $3.99. But there's so little that you're able to work with at that point, and the farmer has to get paid, and his costs have gone up, right? Like he's got to pay for the people working on the farm. He's got to pay for putting up the fences and putting up the fences that the bison knocked down. God, they're strong. And just overall operating costs go up. And like that's what you see when the inflation is on the rise across all industries, because that incremental effect is a domino effect, essentially hitting everything. So then at a certain point, they're like, we have to raise prices because finally this has caught up to us. And now we're going to see bison go up a little. And even then, I mean, looking at those numbers, and Katie, you could agree, like if you're getting for the whole carcass like $8 to $10 a pound, and you can buy some bison at the grocery store, who knows, whatever it is, and they're marketing it at like $9.99 a pound, you're like, well, is that a loss leader? Are they making any money on it? Like, how are they actually, just by pure numbers, like making this work? And that's essentially why you have to look at certain items, in my opinion, and be like, what's the value here? What are they doing to like keep this price low? Like, what's the quality? And essentially, I mean, we've talked about this 100 times before. Like, you need to know what you're buying, what you're spending your hard-earned money on at the grocery store, right? Am I wrong?
No, definitely right. And that makes sense. I mean, and this is a whole nother conversation, but yeah, I mean, it's like, we talk about like a broadline distributor, they're not making their money on like beef ribeyes, they're making their money on straws. And, like you said,
Paper towels, gloves.
You have the parts of the animal that, cost
mayonnaise.
more. And then like you have the grind, which is, doesn't mean it's bad, but it's just doesn't, it's not as much as the ribeye. So kind of helps to balance that out. But yeah, I mean, I think the inflation and the rising prices of everything, like it really does make you and I, and just the general consumers, at least some of them, have to kind of think, okay, well, what am I going to choose to spend this X amount of dollars on? Because, you have however much money for groceries, and none of us are just like getting raises every time,
Yeah, I'm not.
Things get more expensive. So it's
exactly.
Like everyone has a certain, not everyone, most people have like a certain limit where it's like, okay, if this just continues to go up, I mean, I then have to decide, and, we've found as a company in times of economic hardship, there's a lot of people who would, if they've got $12 to spend, or however much, whatever, $15 to spend.
For this example, sure.
They might, stop going out to a steakhouse or whatever, but they're going to want a really good quality burger or something like that. It's
exactly.
like, okay, I'm going to kind of pivot here, but for a lot of people, I know like we're all included here, quality is really important. So we've got to kind of try to find a way to, okay, like I'm not going to completely abandon my standards for what I put in my body, but how can I do that in a way that I can literally afford?
And it gets harder and harder for everybody, especially, and I'm so glad that we know how to cook and we can like take something, especially if it's on the cheaper side, and like make something great for ourselves. But that doesn't tend to be the case. It's always surprising to me when I speak with people and they're like, oh, you know how to cook? I'm like, they're like, oh, I love cooking. I'm like, oh, what do you make? And they're like, spaghetti. And I'm like, oh, that's crazy.
Kraft
I've never boiled water before. And that's fine. Like everybody can have their own thing. Like you have to make your budget work. And like, I do think it's one of those things where everybody should learn how to cook so you can make yourself a nutritious meal. And I mean, we do that. Like we're the poster child of people who are like trying to eat whole foods when we're not ordering out every now and then, or we're trying to
definitely didn't get Domino's for dinner last night.
No, of course
definitely not.
But at the same time, like you could get, a big basket of produce and be like, I don't love all these things, but the person inside of me is not going to waste food. So I'm going to figure out a way to work with it. I'm going to use these 3 eggplants from the farm share or whatever it is. Or like, oh, garlic scapes again this year. Like I never know what to do with this many garlic scapes, but you can find a way to work with it and add a ton of value into the things that you're buying, even as those costs go up. But I think for a lot of people, they're not able to do that. So I think us sharing some of the things we would do in the grocery store and like how we would purchase on the meat side of things or just in general, I think would be helpful for people. And I did have a weird breakdown on something, but you go first.
Okay. I mean, I know we've talked about this before, but farmers markets are great if you have access to one. I don't really believe has no actual evidence behind it, but just based on my visits to the farmers market this year versus last year, like they are not, as affected by everything going on in the economy. And like one of the stands at the farmers market by me, they regularly will have these baskets of various squashes and zucchinis, and they're not massive baskets, but they basically just like stuff as many as they possibly can in there. And it's like deal, like $3 a basket. And I'm like, what? Yes. But,
Yeah.
I don't, my boyfriend doesn't eat squash and zucchini. It's one of my favorite vegetables. So I do this every year. And then I have like 8, whatever, zucchinis or summer squashes. And I got to figure out, like, okay, it's farmer's market produce. So it doesn't have as long a shelf life as the stuff that's, sprayed with all that garbage. It's like even say at the beginning of this week, I was like, I got to take some of these zucchinis to work. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do with them. And then Monday and Tuesday, I ended up just like, they were smaller. So I just kind of like chopped them up and then I fried them up in a pan before I put my egg whites in. And I was like, oh, boom, there you go.
Yeah,
vegetable omelet.
Yeah, you stretch your dollar into something super healthy. And to your point, that's one of those things. Like the farmer's market can be cheaper, but I think people have to be conscious that you have to go through those products. There is the other side of the coin where you could almost argue like having that extended shelf life on something that may not be as good for you might be more valuable to you.
For sure.
But
I'm just thinking like that amount of zucchini at the grocery store would have cost me like at least twice as much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They're like $2 each, and then you get 8 of them. And you're like, oh, I just spent $16 on zucchini.
No, it's wild, but that's
in this economy.
But no, that was just one thing. I mean, I know I didn't touch on the grocery store specifically, because I'm trying to figure that out myself. But I did, I really do appreciate that. I'm not saying everything at the farmer's market is like, oh, it's a great deal, but a lot of things are. And I mean, like these farms, like they need to pick their produce, if they don't pick it and try to sell it, it's just going to rot and fall on the ground and die. And that's money.
And heartbreak.
It's money. It's heartbreaking. So like, if they're going to sell you like several pounds of zucchini, whatever, for $3, that's fine. That's better for them than it sitting on the vine and rotting. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of the times that can be the case too, where these farms are like, we just have an obscene amount of peaches. Like we have more peaches than we know what to do with. We're up to our eyeballs in peaches. So we're just going to like have this crazy great deal by the peaches.
Yeah.
So it can be a good way to find little things like that and also get like super fresh local produce.
And eating seasonally too. Like the farmer's market, a lot of them are like open for significantly more months than they used to be, or they'll have like indoor markets and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to the farmer's market and you see all this variety, buy it now. Take it home, chop it up, put it in the freezer. Like, why would you buy pre-frozen vegetables? People are like, oh, it's picked at the peak and then it's frozen, so it retains all its nutritional value. That's only true when it's at the factory. Because I want you to think about this. You have the truck, and maybe in a cold chain carrier, getting to the dock at whatever, your local shop, right? So it's at peak condition. What if it's sitting there for an hour or 2 hours, or they're not getting it, and it's sitting on their loading dock, and then it's thawing out. It's getting back in their freezer, and it's getting refrozen, and then somebody's taking it out, looking at the nutrition, it's thawing in their hand, they put it back in. How many times does that happen? Then you put it in your basket, you're walking around the store for another hour, it doesn't go in a cooler bag in your car, and you're driving, and it's 95 degrees out, and then you have a product that's been slacked out 2-3 times, and then you put it in your home freezer that's cycling on and off. Are you getting peak peas? Are you getting peak green beans? Like, you have to be conscious of the fact that this supply chain, yes, it works really well. We're very lucky to be able to have access to the things that we do at the end of the day, every day. But at the same time, maybe it is better to go shopping more often. Maybe it is better to pre-plan your meals for the week and not have the meal prep, because I can't eat the same thing 4, 5, 6 times in a row. I really can't.
That is literally my nightmare. No.
But you can plan ahead. You can get those 8 zucchinis and be like, okay, cool. I'm going to go get a steak that I'm going to grill, and then I have grilled zucchini, right? I'm going to get some chicken that I'm going to chop up with some chow mein noodles and toss a bunch of zucchini into that. And now I've had 2 totally different, super nutritious, low carb meals that are good for you that probably didn't cost a ton of money.
Chow mein noodles have carbs.
Or we can get those glass noodles. I mean, whatever. Or not noodles, whatever, They're low carb noodles. They're made of air.
No, that's great. Thanks for the recipe ideas too. I appreciate that. I still have some zucchini
got you,
at home.
fam.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So what else you got on your little magic fact sheet there?
Well, I was thinking about it from a kind of like more anal retentive standpoint of what you're paying for essentially is calories, right? You're paying for energy for your body. And I have that big old tub of almonds that sits on my desk. It's 2 pounds, 4 ounces. And I was like, let me compare this to those silly little rice cakes, that processed rice cake I'll buy and like put peanut butter on them. I'm like, oh, it's like a healthy little snack or whatever it is.
It is a healthy little snack.
It is it is a healthy snack, but what are you getting nutritionally? What is the value that you're
that's
getting?
air.
Nothing.
That's
literally air. It's puffed rice in a
rice.
cake. So not only are you eating super processed grains, which probably aren't inherently good for you, like people are like, oh, there's fiber in it. I'm like, barely any. You eat 4 spinach leaves and you've like exceeded that daily value, plus getting all the vitamins in it. So I was looking, and the whole tub of almonds is 6,120 calories for $12. So they actually break it down. This is from Wegmans. So they break it down into the price per ounce. It's 33 cents an ounce. And there's fiber, there's calcium, there's protein. Almonds are good for you. And then I looked at the rice cakes. It's $4 for a sleeve of rice cakes. And the whole thing, all of it, all like whatever 8 rice cakes is 490 calories.
Healthy little snack, I maintain.
That's 89 cents an ounce. That's 3 times the cost for what's 6,000 divided by 400. You do the math. I'm not taking my phone out on
it. Put it on the list.
I forgot part of the equation. But it's one of those things like you're getting, and you also get no nutritional value. There is
more than a donut.
You get less nutritional value than a donut because you're not getting any calories. You're not getting any energy.
Fair, yeah.
And there's arguably more fiber because there's more stuff, right, in the donut. And the donut tastes better. You know what
Lesson
I mean?
is abandon your rice cakes, go to Dunkin' Donuts.
But seriously, like when people think about eating healthy, it's like, are you eating healthier? Like, are you spending your money wisely? And this isn't an attack on anybody. We all do these things.
You're literally the example in this example.
Yeah,
so
I'm the example. You know what I mean? And like my big vice is Diet Coke. Like I buy that,
So
and it's
bad
getting
for
to the
you.
point that like
Love
a can of
it.
Diet Coke is like $1 each, and I'm like, what am I paying for? Like fake sugar water, literally?
Yeah, delicious fake sugar water.
Yeah, and they rule. And I
Cannot
buy
be-
them for both of us.
Yeah.
We both really
She
like
literally
it.
just bought a whole sleeve today.
So it's kind of like, what are you going to cut out first? I mean, obviously people are like, oh, I'll cut out like the sugary drinks and like the snack foods and stuff like that. And that's kind of hard to do.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you see a bunch of bananas on sale, why don't you just like chop them into coins and turn the oven to 150 and make banana chips and stuff like that? Like it takes effort. It is more work. And there's a conversation of like, how much is your time worth?
Yeah, I mean, but it's
Mine, not a lot.
I mean, it's very hard though because like I don't really like keep track of how much money I spend each week on, you know, groceries and food and drinks. Like I don't, you know, really keep track of that. I'm sure that if I did, I'd probably be pretty disturbed, you know, but I mean, it does take like really active hard work, you know, like the best I can say for myself is that like I'm always looking for sales. You know, I mean, I try to, if I have a whole row of products, you know, I look at the price because I don't really care what brand of hummus I eat, you know, so I look at all of it and I just buy the cheapest one. Like I'm not, this is why I said I'm still figuring it out. Like I'm not a great example because that's literally the only thing I do, but it is like if someone actually wanted to really, I mean, properly manage that financially and like the food expense. I mean, you have to like have a number. You have to keep track of things and you got to do what Ben said. You know, you have to become resourceful, not just with how you spend your money, but how you prepare the stuff you buy and not let it go to waste. And like, there's so many things. It's not easy. It's not like simple budgeting.
Exactly. And in a way, I think
I've stressed myself out with that.
No
like,
need to
so
stress.
much.
But you also, like, you don't waste a lot of food. Like, I see you where you're like, you know, I don't want to eat this again, but I'm going to eat this again because I have these leftovers and I'm not going to fall into that sunk cost fallacy. I'm too smart for that, Katie said.
Yeah.
And at the same time, to tie it back into kind of what we do here, and, you know, people talk about us selling premium meats. Like, we're selling a premium quality product and it comes at a small additional dollar cost to you, but for good reason, because you don't have to eat a cheap 10-ounce ribeye from the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And we've said this a million times. You can get like a small elk steak. Maybe it costs you like $6 to $8 instead of $5. But if you're getting more protein and it's more nutrient dense, isn't that ultimately a better value to you? And then you can find ways to save money on the plate that isn't on the protein, that isn't something that's going into your body.
Like your shampoo.
Right, exactly. Or something else, you know what I
No,
mean?
I
Or
get.
if you get your nails done, ladies, or like
Uh,
guys, like if you go get your Camaro washed or something, or you get like a premium gasoline, like something like that where you're like, it's a frivolous thing.
Ugh.
Like you have to be conscious of the stuff that is important in your life. And I think, again, with bias, like for me, that's the food that I eat. Like that's my passion.
Yeah.
Like if I go home and I have to eat like a cheap, bad meal every day, I'd be very sad. Like I will pony up to have a bison tomahawk every now and then, every other month or something like that. Cause I've made a budget in my mind where I'm like, now I can afford this steak and treat myself.
Mm.
And maybe I just won't eat the whole thing in one sitting. Maybe.
I mean, I think what's important about, what you're saying about, oh, shouldn't you want the elk? It's better. It's $1 more. I think a lot of that comes down to literally like retraining the American public.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not how we don't view things the way you just laid them out. Well, most people don't, I guess I should say, but
yeah, Carrabba's is a thing, unfortunately. So I understand.
but going back like a little bit to, what you're saying, yeah, you're paying more for a premium product. It's not just that the product is premium and the quality is superb, but something that I think is really important to note, which I'm sure we've touched on in past episodes, is that entire supply chain line. I mean, it goes down and all the way back to the farmer themselves. And something that's super important to us is the sustainability of the entire process. And I mean, part of that includes, making sure that farm is sustainable enough to exist in the future. And, one of those way to make sure that happens is that farmer has to get paid a livable, reasonable wage.
Yeah.
And when things get more expensive, like we don't work with any farmer, any suppliers, anyone that's just going to cut what the farmer gets paid.
Right.
We don't do that. It's very important that every single link in that chain is taken care of in a way that their income and their livelihood is stable and it's sustainable.
Exactly. I think that's the exact thing. It's stable and sustainable.
Mm.
You need to care about everybody in the supply chain. Some people don't. That's fine. We're not going to have a moral conversation on that. But you want the person who's raising your food to be living a good life and for them to care.
Yeah.
And then for the next person to care about not wasting that as they get it over to you. And because you care that you're going to cook it and eat it and have to have it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be better for you. I mean, there's also things to be like, use the freezer, right? You see the deal going on something and like maybe it's not the sale on like the boneless, skinless chicken breasts. And you're like, well, I'm on a diet. Too bad. Go get the bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs, okay? Yeah, take the skin off. or you don't have to eat it. You're still paying less. You could throw the skin and the bone out of the skin-on, bone-in chicken thighs, and you're still saving money. And you're getting more nutrient-dense food because the thighs are higher in calories. So you can eat 6 ounces instead of 8 ounces and things like that. You just have to be conscious. You can't look at the food on the plate as like, oh, the circle goes in the circle hole.
Yeah.
Like, no, dude, like you can have a smaller looking plate and you're actually getting more nutrition into your body and you can plan ahead for that. Again, everybody's life is different. There's challenges for everybody. None of us are really getting paid anymore as things go up 25% in 4 years. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But you have to be conscious of it. I mean, you have a nicer fridge than I do. I don't have a ton of room in it, but I'm sure your freezer's full of like odds and ends of who knows
so
what.
many odds and so many ends.
Share that with the class.
What's in my freezer?
Well, not everything, but what and why you do it. Like you like having those things around. So you're like, oh, you know what? I have this. I can throw this in here.
I was going to say it's not that bad, but I guess in this context, it's not that good right now. I actually feel really good that I've kind of cleaned it out. But no, I mean, I have a couple quarts of frozen chicken stock. I've got a tray of elk medallions. I have, I think I have like a single venison tenderloin in there. That's probably no good because I just put it in a Ziploc bag and it's probably all freezer burn right now. But
making a stew, baby.
It's at the back of the freezer, so we don't really know. I've got probably some frozen vegetables, like peas. Actually, I mean, I'm like that.
That's fine.
I'm the person that
that's
example.
Nothing wrong with that.
But yeah, I've got like some peas in there. I've got I think some pre-made stew or soup of some variety in like a quart or a pint container. I've got these really weird package of those ice pops that half of them won't freeze. My boyfriend and I do not understand. Sorry, I'm totally going left field here.
I'm so curious now, though. You've caught my
It's
attention.
those ice pops. They're all different colors. There's like a skinny strip and there's a strip. So first I get the whole package. I take it out of the box. Of course, I brought the store brand, not the whatever freeze pop brand.
What store?
And I don't know, Acme, yeah. And
Unfortunate.
so first I take like the 2 big bundles of pops all wrapped together and I just put them in there, right? Next day they're like not frozen. I'm like, this is weird. Let me spread these out, right? So I lay them, and it's been like a week and a half, and about 25% of them are not frozen. I said to Tom,
I don't even know
I was like,
to say
is there
that.
antifreeze in here? I literally said to him, I was like, do we not eat the ones that aren't frozen? And he was like, I don't really think we should.
Maybe they
can't.
fermented. There's alcohol in them.
No, there's not alcohol in them. And I like
I
most
wish.
of them froze, but he said the other day, he was like, I literally took them and I put them in the ice cube tray with the ice cubes and they're not frozen. Something is very concerning here. And I was like, I am also concerned.
Yeah, clearly everything else is frozen.
Anyway, everything else in the freezer is frozen except for the weird antifreeze ice pops. But that's pretty much all I can think of right now is in my freezer. There might be some frozen pizza in there.
But like you've had the point where you're like, oh, I have a ton of stuff that I like happen to have laying around, and like you worked on cleaning out your freezer.
Yeah.
But I've had like bags of like frozen veggies where I was like, oh, I cut up like a whole onion for some reason.
I
that I didn't need.
I think that's really smart. When you just said that, like I've never like thought of that. Like, oh, I'll just make myself frozen vegetables. Like I have not done that, but that's like super, super smart.
That's what my mom does.
I love
she
that.
gets like a ton, like she'll get a bunch of parsley, right? And I'm like, you're one
Why'd
tiny
you
little
freeze
5-foot German lady. So she'll wash it and dry it, right? And like put it on paper towels, chop it, and then let it get like dried out a little bit between paper towels for a day. Put it in a container and then freeze it. And because there's not a ton of water content in it, if you've let it like dry a little bit, you just have parsley ready to go. You go just dump that into your stew.
I love that. That's very smart.
Or she'll buy bulk butter at Costco. You know what I mean? Like,
butter.
Yeah. She's like,
Freeze
why do you have
the
a
heck out of
Costco membership as one person? She's like, well, I have, in her little German accent, I have to buy 12 sticks of butter at a time. And I just go through 1 week, so that's 12 weeks, 3 months of butter.
I love it. But yeah, I mean, I guess the moral of the story is that it's a challenging landscape right now for everyone. It's difficult and it's super expensive, but there are ways, you know, some easier than others to kind of combat it and to navigate that landscape in a way that, you know, is sustainable for you and your family.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can get after it.
Don't be afraid of the costs going up because unfortunately sometimes it is what it is. But we wanted to explain to you why some things are more stable than others and why certain costs happen to go up at a certain time. And that's okay because you can plan ahead. And if you need help, call us.
And you can eat more game meat too.
Yeah, exactly. You can eat better meat. Like find the value in your dollar. You work hard for your money. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's pretty much it, guys. So, I mean, thank you for listening. You know, it was not the happiest topic, but I think we kept it real bubbly and fun.
Yeah. We want to help.
Yeah. So regardless, thank you guys so much for listening. Please please subscribe, please follow us on all the socials and comment whatever you want, as long as it's not too mean, because then you make Ben sad.
I cry every time.
He cries. And, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you next time.
Bye.